Yes, Michelle?
Yes, what are you going to tell us about your book?
Oh, I thought you'd never ask. I just happen to have a copy here with me. Excuse me. And there are also some on the table at the back for those of you who might like to take one home. My Uruguay is a collection of vignettes from my formative years growing up in Uruguay. It is unapologetically nostalgic for a time and place that in retrospect feels quite magical to me. One of the most popular features of this book is that the stories are mercifully short. They can all be read in just a few minutes. I'll show you. One day when I was about 10 years old, I somehow wandered out of my school in Montevideo and drifted off into the neighborhood. I walked past a construction site and looked through the fence and saw that some workers were cooking lunch over a makeshift fire. They saw me peering through the fence and asked me to join them. The one who had invited me, whose name was Gervasio, took his knife and sliced off a piece of meat, put it on a chunk of bread, and handed it to me. His hands were spattered with cement, and the bushy hair on his forearms was thickly matted with brick dust. My mother would have been horrified, but I didn't care. The meat smelt even better than it had for the street, and I took a huge bite right away, then closed my eyes in ecstasy. I thought I had never tasted anything so good in my whole life, and tried to say so, mumbling through a very full mouth. There was more laughter, and I suddenly realized that I felt completely comfortable and strangely at home. I say strangely because at that stage of my sheltered life, I had never had any contact with construction workers, or in fact anybody from what my grandmother called the working class. The men would no doubt have defined my family as Ingleses, and they had probably not had much to do with people like me either. I'd give a great deal to be able to remember what we talked about at lunch that day. Shortly after that incident, my bicycle was stolen, my pride and joy. I was absolutely distraught, heartbroken. But my father reassured me. He said everything was going to be all right. And he took me to a street market in downtown Montevideo where you could reclaim things that had been lost. As we walked towards the market, my father told me that if I spotted my bike, I was to point at it and say, "I'd like that one, please." I was not to scream, "That's my bike!" or in any other way to reveal that I was the true owner. We walked along streets that teemed with people and things for sale. The jumble of sounds and sights and people was exhilarating. And we walked slowly, trying to look as though we were just browsing, just like everyone else. There were tools and jewelry and clothes on hangers. There were clocks, records and tapes, magazines and fishing poles. There were songbirds in cages, their shrill notes blending with the inevitable tango music coming from a record player in the doorway of an antique store. It was still early and the air was cool, wafting scented waves of leather, burlap, rosemary, mate, and oranges. And then, suddenly, there it was. I almost choked and very nearly screamed, "That's my bike!" Somehow, I managed to contain myself and instead touched my dad's arm and said, "I'd like that one, please." Smiling broadly, my father approached the vendor, and soon they were talking and nodding, and before I knew it, I was walking away, back along the crowded streets. Only this time I was oblivious to the chaos and the beauty around me. I only had eyes for my bike.
How many years did you live in Uruguay?
20 years.
20 years. Were you raised in English or in Spanish?
In English.
In English.
Mainly. In a British, my family is British, and so I grew up in a British cocoon.
Great. So the Uruguay book is biographical.
Yes, completely.
Wonderful. Thank
Yes.
you.
And it's right on the table. Just kidding. And now